We want to discuss the issue of contentment, living in peace and contentment, and what it requires for you to be somebody who lives in peace and contentment. I want to start with an example. Which one do you think lives a better life? An antelope in the wild or sheep that has a shepherd? Which of them? Let's use several examples. For example, the advantages of being an antelope are several. Number one, you eat wherever you choose. Freedom is the biggest advantage of the antelope. It can eat wherever, whatever it is after. Not like the sheep that only eats in the paddock that the shepherd has opened. And even if it can see the grass is greener on the other side of the fence, it can't go over. It has to eat there until the shepherd allows it to go to the next. Not so for an antelope. It can actually eat anywhere. And that life of freedom is something that looks very attractive for an antelope. I think the other thing that is good about it is that it can mix with almost any group of antelopes. It is not controlled that it has to be only with these ones. They can also go to other antelopes and mix with it. But on the negative side, it is important to note that the sheep may not have the freedom, but it has provisions. You just need to go to Nairobi National Park during the dry season, January, February, when it's very dry. And you see the carcass of antelopes when they have lacked water and grass. At that time, the sheep that have a shepherd are eating the grass that was cut at an earlier time and kept in store. And now the shepherd keeps feeding it. And in fact, it may be as fat during the dry season as it was during the rainy season. So the sheep continues enjoying its provisions even when there is drought out there. Number two, the sheep is kept in a controlled environment for the protection against the animals. What about the antelope? The antelope has to face the lions. You know, the antelope is only helped by its speed. It has to pray that it runs faster than the fastest lion, so that it can actually escape for a longer period. Because basically the lion sees antelopes as his own food. What about the sheep? They are kept, and if the man knows that where he is there are lions, he will make it even harder for the lions to reach the sheep. So you can see the protection is not for the shepherd's good. The protection is for the sheep's good. And you can see clearly the sheep will grow fatter, be healthier, and is going to be protection from wild animals and from attacks from enemies more than the other one. But it's lacking what the antelope calls freedom. We are similar as people. Somebody feels like he's living his life by being out there like the prodigal son. He did not want to be controlled by the father. The father was like a shepherd. Don't do that, do that. Why don't you cultivate here and not here? And he said, no. If this property of yours is finally going to be mine, give me now. I want my freedom. He actually got his freedom. Went to a far land, we are told in Luke. Went to a far land and enjoyed his freedom. But the freedom came with a responsibility. When the drought came, just like the antelopes, he almost became a carcass until he remembers, instead of dying, why don't you go back? And what I called control, but at least it's survival. I want to ask you a question. Do you want to live a life of contentment? then you must have a shepherd. You must be a person who is shepherded. Because the shepherd will shepherd you in feeding you, but he will shepherd you in protecting you so that you are at peace. The antelope has to keep thinking, where am I going to eat next? If this grass gets finished, if there's a lion in this particular thicket, where else can I go? It has to spend a lot of time planning, not so for the sheep. It has a shepherd who plans. You finish this paddock, you now go to this paddock. Now there is no grass, you eat the fodder. Now, basically, there's somebody planning and investing the thinking process for the sake of the sheep. And I'm suggesting to you, if you want to live a life of contentment, it will be important that you actually do have a shepherd. So this life of contentment, and the New Testament talks about it, that you give us, our shepherd will give us life and life in abundance. What are the conditions that can help you to get this? If you go to Psalms 23, we read, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely your goodness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." This is a promise of your experience if you choose God as your shepherd. In this passage, I see several conditions for this life of contentment. The first one is, he starts by saying in verse 1, "The Lord is my shepherd." In other words, for me to benefit with all the benefits that follow Psalms 23, the precursor is, "But is the Lord your shepherd?" It is very interesting how you insure your car with insurance company X, which is not good at paying. When there's an accident, you go to insurance Y, which pays better. They will not pay. You will never send your premiums there. It's very interesting how many people have quarrels with God. How has God forgotten me? How they have quarrels and they are so unhappy with God. But ask them, do they have God as their shepherd? Are they under his control? Are they under his fence? Would they even be willing to be under his fence? So here we are, paying our premiums to the devil, but he wants God's insurance to be the one to pay us when we are in trouble. The first condition, if you really want to live a life of contentment and joy and peace, facing whatever you are facing and yet being confident, it will be, is the Lord your shepherd. That's what the psalmist says. Is Jesus your Savior and Lord? Have you accepted to be born again and to put yourself under his lordship? Condition number 2, we see in verse 3. He promises to do all what will be for our good, for his name's sake. And it sounds like in the process he is saying, God will not do anything because of us. He will do anything because of his name's sake. If he was to do good to us because of our sake, we will not qualify. We are too sinful for anything to happen. So the condition is, have you accepted that, or you can only get anything from God by grace? It's not fit for that. I have tithed, I've done this. And there are people like that. They think the only way they can get anything from the shepherd is by reminding him what they have done. But what you have done is inadequate. So the psalmist says, all this will happen to me, not because I'm a wonderful guy, but for his name's sake. Let me ask it differently. however you live your life, what motivates you? Is it whatever you do, is it for pleasure or for God's glory? The psalmist in Psalms 37 says, delight thyself in the Lord, and He'll give you the desires of your heart. If you really want this life where your desires are met, the first thing is to subject those desires to the Lordship of Christ. Because He'll do anything for His name's sake. And it's important to ask yourself, how are you living your life? Do you live it to honor and glorify Him? Do you understand that there's nothing you deserve? So you live a life of thankfulness, because anything that God gives you, you can't say, yeah, after all I tithed. You know, even your tithe is actually not any money you are giving God. It's out of what God has given you. You give a little, but you still retain most of it. So the truth of the matter is, when we give to God, we are only giving back what He gave us in the first place. So the condition of a man of peace is a man who has realized there is nothing he deserves from God. So he lives a life of thankfulness for the things God gives us. Do you know there are many things God gives you, but you take them for granted? Then you lack something and you're always complaining. But the many things He had given you, you never became thankful, because you felt, after all, I'm a Christian. What else could happen to me? Now, anybody who recognizes that anything he has is for His name's sake will be grateful to be able to sleep. You'll be grateful to be able to wake up. You'll be grateful to be able to eat when you know there are people who can't eat. Through their mouth, they are having to use pipes. He gets excited. You live a life of thankfulness. You know, like the songwriter, count your blessings, name them one by one. You live a life where you are happy about the many things that God is doing for you. Thirdly, I see another condition in verse 4. For you are with me. In other words, good things happen. Number one, when He is your shepherd. Number two, because of His namesake. Number three, if you choose to be with Him. For you are with me. The reason why good things will happen, according to verse 4, is because He is with me. Around Christmas, we keep repeating the name Emmanuel, God with us. Do you stay in His presence permanently? Do you practice God's presence? You know, there are people who think that there is, even in church, there are people who cannot sit near the front because it's near the altar. What's an altar? Where God is. How cheated are we? God does not live on earth. He lives in our hearts. So wherever you are is where God is. So it's important to understand this idea of practicing God's presence everywhere, all the time, will put you to where you are able to sense His presence. You know, there are many things you do out there, but you can't do in church, because the church is where God is present. What about if you knew that God is with you wherever you are? That's where the blessings will come from. Because once you know His presence, then you know, although you cannot tackle your current enemy, you hand him over to the Lord who is with you in that place. With you. Now, do you stay in His presence all the time? The condition to enjoy what the psalmist is enjoying is if you know and practice God's presence with you. And fourthly, verse 4 is saying, He is able to do this because of your rod and your staff. They comfort me. Your rod and staff. Do accept God's discipline. You know, the shepherd carries a rod to fight the wolves that are coming to attack the sheep, and he carries the staff which guides the sheep or directs the sheep or disciplines the sheep. The rod is not for the sheep. So, do you accept God's discipline? Or you're always complaining whenever things are tough? You know, the Bible tells us He disciplines His own sons, not others. In fact, if you found some children doing wrong things, you will pick yours, discipline him. You don't bother with the stranger's children. generally today. Of course, in history, we are told things were different. So if God is your Lord, He will discipline you. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. All the sheep needs to remember, hey, that rod, if a wolf came, if a leopard came, my shepherd will handle it. So it is able to graze in peace. Number 2, the staff, guiding staff, will show me which direction should not be moving. Do you accept God's discipline? Do you live a life of discipline directed by God? Discipline is ability to do what needs to be done, even when it's not enjoyable, even when it does not please you. Is that the kind of life you live? If you do, then you'll be comforted. And finally, verse 5 says, you prepare a table before me. In other words, do you accept God's provisions? Do you accept that God is the one who is providing? He's the one preparing a table before you. In other words, you enjoy the meal, but really, to be frank, it's God who has prepared it. These are conditions we need to be aware of if we truly want to serve the Lord. But let's now look at the psalm to see what the promises are. What are the benefits of being shepherded? Unlike the antelope, you are a sheep being shepherded. If you accept the Lord as your shepherd, verse 1, you lack nothing. I shall not want is Old English. Modern English, I shall lack nothing. And that's something that I find very interesting. How can you lack nothing? The shepherd does not give you what you don't need. He gives you only what you need. So he has promised to supply all your needs, not all your wants, all your needs. And it means that whenever you have a need, you can cry to him. One of the benefits and the thing that gives you peace is to be able to face life and be able to remember what the psalmist writes. I was young, now I'm old. I have never seen the righteous forsaken, nor his children begging bread. Because he is a shepherd, I shall lack nothing. And that's one of the things that you have to think about as a benefit. God's provisions at all times, that he is going to give you what you need, when you need, in ways he chooses. So you need to ask yourself, but you made it a shepherd, like we said earlier. If you have, then trust. Do what he shows you how. But in the end, trust that he will provide. And so far he has provided. Maybe he has not provided what you want, but he has provided what you need, no matter you are alive. So what that means that you don't sit there worried. In fact, I think it's Jesus who said, what can worry bring you? Can it make your hair taller? Worrying is useless, and you shouldn't worry. Instead, you will be at peace when you know the Lord is your shepherd and is the one who provides. Verse 2 is saying, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. So the first thing he is saying, he is this shepherd who will make me enjoy my green pastures. That means the times of plenty, times of riches, times of joy, and weddings and things like that. A lot of people are destroyed by riches. In fact, most of us can handle poverty. Riches require help. That's why Paul said, I have had to learn how to be contented when I'm in plenty, when I'm in want. That means even in plenty, you require God's help. But he is promising there will be times of green pastures, and he'll make you lie down. Instead of becoming frary and running all over, you will be at peace. I talked with a rich man years gone by, more than 40 years ago, who said that the life of a rich man is very difficult. It's like being at the top of a tree Once you're at the top, the only way you can move might be down. So he leaves clinging on the branch in case he falls. But where people are right on the ground, there's nowhere they can fall. So you need to understand having plenty has its own challenges. And you need to ask yourself, have you learned how to handle the times of plenty? Green pastures. Because God will give you green pastures. Will you learn how to rejoice with the green pastures without getting lost? But the next blessing promise is he leads me in quiet waters. This sounds like a time of boredom, when you find no reason for living. Still waters is time for boredom. And whereas riches can put you into a lot of trouble and you end up changing your values and going the wrong way, boredom, he leads me beside still quiet waters. When water is that still and quiet, it sounds a time of boredom. Many people, the reason they tell you I did this and that, I'm so bored, so I ended up doing the wrong thing. You need God's help, and He's promising that He'll lead you beside quiet waters. He'll give you a time when nothing seems to happen. Things are routine. You are repeating the same thing you have always done. And at that point, you need His help. Time of boredom, you need His help to direct you and to actually lead you. And that will be something that you need to ask yourself. At a time of boredom, where things are routine, have you learned to talk to Him? Because He's able to help you. So that although the things are so routine, a repeat of what you have always done, He can give a new perspective to it. And so you end up at peace and joy, although you are doing something repetitive. Another blessing, if the Lord is your shepherd, He refreshes my soul. That is in verse 3. Here, you are not in riches, you are not in boredom. It sounds like you are depressed. And what is He promising? Refreshing your soul. What is He actually promising? He is promising restoring your soul. And that may be a word that is meant for the person who is in depression, that is going through stress, and they are in trouble. God is saying, when I take you through such a system, I'll refresh your soul. I'll give you new vitality. And things will change. So you can see the psalmist is looking at several situations and how God has helped him. And he's saying, even when I was having a depression or some stress or frustration, God came and He refreshed my soul. And it will be important for you to ask whether that is something you have actually gone through. But verse 3 has something else. He guides me along the right paths. He guides me along the right paths. So, here is a person wanting to make a decision. To choose a career, to choose a life partner, to make a big business deal. He's saying, don't worry. He is a God who guides me along the right paths. He will make you make the right choices. Isn't it good to know this kind of a shepherd who is promising it every type of situation? He has a solution for it. So you can go to Him to show you of the many paths open to you, which is the right one. Not which is the better one, which is the right one. Because there is only one right one, but you don't know it. He guides me along the right paths. And that's something you can rest assured He will do. And you need to ask guidance, direction. Getting to know what your calling is, your vision and your mission. That's what He promises. Giving you the right paths. A path gives you into the future. But which future? You need to pick the right path so that you can go into the right future. God has promised you be with you, and you deal with that also. Look at verse 4. And I think it's promising even more. And you need to understand as you go, there will be times of the darkest valley. Older English talks about through the valley of the shadow of death. Valley of the shadow of death. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, the new NIV is calling it the darkest valley. Maybe you have just lost a loved one. Maybe you have lost your spouse, or you have lost your son or your daughter, or you lost your parents. You are going through a mourning period. He is saying, even though I'm going through a mourning period, I'll not be afraid. I know God's comfort. He has promised in verse 4, He will comfort you, like we saw earlier. That's a blessing. And you need to understand that that's on the hardest time. But when you talk about death, valley of the shadow of death, it may not be second death. It may be you are in the university and you have just failed, and they have actually told you cannot even repeat. So you have seen your future totally shattered, and it's a loss. Or you had a job and you are now jobless, and there's no way you know what the future is. It's a loss. It's a loss. So it's a mourning period. You are not mourning for somebody dead. You are mourning for something lost. He is promising, even if you walk through that valley, during the period you are walking through that valley, darkest valley, He is going to be with you, and He is going to comfort you. But He goes on to say in this one, I will fear no evil. It means you are facing various enemies and various attacks. He is promising, even when that happens, I'll be with you. I'll be with you. You are with me. And you will comfort me. That's what the rod and the staff are needed for, and they comfort me. You are promised difficult times will come, but you can be at peace and joy right in the middle of the difficult time. Why? Remember, He is with me. Remember, He went through a deeper valley when He died on the cross. He understands what I'm going through. And I think that's something that can help you. So, what are you going through? Difficulty? Or are you time of fearing for what will happen, is about to happen? Remember, the shepherd will be with you. Remember, the shepherd has a rod and staff. He will comfort you. Then verse 5 says, You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Here, He is dealing with enemies. And He's saying, He is so much in charge of your enemies that you can enjoy a meal as they are looking. He prepares a table before me in the presence of my enemies. What is even more is, you anoint my head with oil until my cup overflows. In other words, the blessings are more than I can handle. In the presence of enemies, when people wish you evil, God still brings success your way. And finally, because of this, surely goodness, number 2, love, they are both going to follow me. Not when I'm young, not during when I'm strong, all the days of my life. But even He finishes with a kicker. I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. In other words, eternity is my home. I'm assured of life after death. So I do not even fear my own death. I will dwell with you in your house forever. And in this process, my life, not just now, for the whole life, it will be attended by goodness and love all the days of my life. And after this life, I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. and ever. What a promise. That's why you can live a life of contentment.